And here they come. Welcome, welcome. We're gonna take ownership on tonight, folks. We're gonna have a good time. Gonna take ownership.
Hi guys.
Hello, York. How are you?
I'm doing well, actually. I got a messy hair day, but I just got
That's
off
all
work.
right, man. It looks cool. More
Thanks.
like my era, windswept.
Yeah, actually, last week, or what was it, 2 weeks ago, you guys had a Zoom meeting.
Yeah.
About one hour before the meeting, I came down with the flu,
Oh no.
and oh, it was so horrible. But I'm glad to be back, so I'm feeling
Yeah, no
much better.
kidding. Yeah. Well, better
So
the flu than the COVID.
yeah, it was definitely not the COVID. I had to go to the
Good.
doctor, and my wife made me get tested and all that. So it was a good time, but glad to be feeling better.
Well,
So
welcome back amongst the living. I'm glad to have you here
thanks,
tonight.
guys. Thanks.
Yeah. Okay, folks. Wow, we got some great stuff to talk about tonight. And well, I had a closing today, which was really kind of fun, and it was 565. But it was my listing, and of course the other side of it was with an agent that was competing with four other, well, it's four offers in total, but hers was the winner because the sellers liked her buyers. They met them when they came through and they liked them, so they got it. But she was telling me how frustrated she was in the marketplace because working with buyers is kind of tough right now. It's tough because there's so many multiple offers. Agent friend of mine that picked up a listing in the Harvard Yale area gave me a heads up, before she put it on the MLS, and said, you got to get out and look at this one. It's really nice. It's 1.5 million. And I said, yeah, I'll get over there. But then a little bit like York, I was a little bit under the weather, so I didn't get out there for a few days. And I called her and says, okay, I'm ready to go look at that one now. She says, oh man, Roller, it's already sold. I got it under contract. She says, how many offers did you get in that $1.5 million house in the Harvard Yale area? And she said 15 offers. So there's about 14 people wandering the streets of Salt Lake looking for $1.5 million home. That's kind of interesting, isn't it? But there's a moral to all this. Yes, the market is a little low on inventory, and yes, the market is superheated with people paying over appraised value to get homes. And yes, the market can be very frustrating if you're working with buyers because you're going to be competing. Almost every listing is going to have multiple buyers. So in the situation on the house on the Harvard Yale area, there were 14 disappointed buyers and 14 disappointed agents, but there was one agent who was really happy. And who was that? My friend who called me and told me she had the listing, right? She wanted to give me a heads up. And who was happy today at today's closing? Me, because who always wins in this kind of market, folks? You answer the question for me. Who always wins? The answer is the listing agent. The listing agent always wins. Even if the deal falls apart, you still have a listing. You'll get another buyer. I was afraid this one at close of day wasn't going to make it because the underwriter came back at last minute with some cornball ideas. But we got them all taken care of. We got it closed. Well, the other agent did. But she was frustrated. So my point is, folks, you want to love life and still have a life. Instead of taking a buyer out and writing an offer and then not getting it and writing another offer, not getting it, and writing another offer, not getting it. And finally they get discouraged and tell you, I don't want to buy a house anymore. Or you just luck out and maybe you get one. Or you develop some really good strategies for writing offers, which, we ought to, talk about in one of our practical classes. But I just want to share with you, the idea is in this market, you should be focused on getting listings because they're all going to sell and you're going to love life and you can do it by appointment and you don't have to drive people all over town and write 15 different offers before they finally get a house. And one of the very best books that you could ever get on doing database marketing is this book right here. It's called Hot Prospects by a good buddy of mine named Bill Good. Be good. Okay. But Bill made millions of dollars working with stockbrokers, registered agents, and getting them from making $1 million a year in commissions to $2 and $3 million a year. And he did it through database marketing. So a lot of people say, well, how do you find sellers? You get involved with database marketing and you develop your database and you love life. Okay. So that's all I got to tell you. The last 2 closings I've had in the last same number of weeks, 4 weeks, have all been out of database marketing. So, you guys do what you want to do. But if you want to do 20, 30 deals a year and still, or 40 or 50 and still maintain a lifestyle where you're not out every day and night working with buyers and writing up offers, and that's okay too. But the only buyers I like working with are my sellers who turned into buyers because I sold their house out from under them. Okay, so tonight we're going to be talking about, and I want you to understand, folks, that you're welcome to call Dan. You're welcome to call me. My phone number, 801-556-8000. If you have concerns or questions about the industry or about getting through the exam, you're welcome to call. And we'll spend some quality time on the phone, and you'll be glad you did. And so will I, because I'm not out working with a lot of buyers. I'm sitting around waiting for your calls. Come on. Okay, let's jump right into our questions tonight. Our topic tonight is ownership. And there's a lot of terms and there's a lot of concepts that we're going to dig into tonight. And when you walk away from this Zoom meeting tonight, I hope that you have a much better understanding of this concept. So Dan, let's bring up that. Oh, tonight also working with us as usual, Mr. d.Neither, the director of the Institute of Real Estate Education, and also our host with the most tonight, and our technical expert who's making all this happen. So let's see that first question, Dan. All right. Okay, here we go. If a real estate purchase contract is signed by both parties, but the buyer finds that the contract does not accurately represent the property, the contract is A, executed, B, automatically voided, C, unilateral, or D, voidable by the buyer. What do you think, gang? If you're thinking one of the first 3, you're wrong, because the last one is voidable by the buyer. Why? Because there was a defect in the contract. It didn't accurately represent the deal or the property. In this case, it was the property. So there was no real meeting of the minds. It's not executed. Executed means it's finished, put up against the wall and shot, I guess, but it means the contract is finished. Nothing automatically voids. I mean, you've got to make steps to get a contract voided. Unilateral means it's just one-sided. Uni meaning one, like a unicycle. Bicycle would be 2 people have to agree on something, but unilateral, one only takes one. But in this particular instance, it's voidable by the buyer. And why is that? Well, because it found certain provisions that were inaccurate, and it's voidable by the party that was disadvantaged or the affected, which would be the buyer. Seller already owns it. Okay, great. Next question, please. Let's talk about a valid contract. And there's 3 things a valid contract for land requires. And, there's actually 4 essential elements, but this question is just focusing on 3 of those. And for real estate contract, we say there's a 5th, which, has to be written. But 3 things a valid contract for land must, whether it's land or improved land, are a broker, an expiration, and consideration. I like that. I think every deal ought to include a broker, and I think it ought to be me, unless it's you. But that's not right. B, consideration, offer, acceptance, and competent parties. Hang on to that one. That was really warm and fuzzy, and also the correct answer. C, competent parties. Okay, that's good. Tax provisions. That's coming out of left field. And consideration. Okay, obviously that one's wrong because of the tax provisions. Not all contracts have to have that, even if it is for land or something else. And D, a legal description of the land, a broker. Oh, there you go. And a competent parties. I like the competent parties. I like a legal description or an adequate description, but I don't like a broker. So the correct answer to this one is B, consideration, offer and acceptance, competent parties. And the fourth, as you'll learn in your contracts class, is lawful purpose. And because it's real estate, it needs to be written. Okay, that's our first two questions. How'd you guys do? Well, hopefully you got them all right so far. Now we're talking about the statute of frauds in the next question. Statute of frauds is a type of contract that it's one of those contracts that is very similar in most states. And because real estate is transaction across state lines all the time, you have these uniform statutes. And the statute of frauds is one of these uniform statutes, which Utah signed into. States can accept these exactly as written, or they can make minor modifications because of their state law and accept them. But in Utah, we have our form of the statute of frauds. And because of that, it says a contract must be encumbered. Well, properties are encumbered, but I don't know about the contract. Chattel means personal property. C, a lien. Not all contracts have to do with money. A lien is something, that has to do with money. And you're right, York, it's D, signed by both parties. Okay, because you have to have that meeting of the minds, and it's witnessed by that. And but not only do you have to have that meeting of the mind, but it must be written. Can't really understand what you're saying there, but the microphone wasn't working very well. But obviously, if it's signed, it's in writing, isn't it? Okay, let's go to our next one, please. A and B are married, and they're selling their vacation home that they purchased together. They have signed purchase agreement, and it is time to close the property. So, okay, like the closing I had today. Today, only one person signed. She was a personal representative for an estate. But in this case, we have two people. They're married, which is neither here nor there. But they're signing they have a vacation home that they purchased together, okay, meaning they're probably both vested in title. And they have signed a purchase agreement. And now it's time to close. Who do you think has to sign, guys? Esther, you're absolutely right. A and B both must sign the deed. That's right, guys. A and B both must sign the deed. And they have to sign the deed the way they were vested in title. So if you have someone that calls himself Mike, but he took title as Michael, he better be signing that deed as Michael. Or obviously, if his name is Michael, but he had it deeded into Mike, then he better sign it as Mike. I went to closing one time and sold one of my properties, dashed in, dashed out. And I signed it Rick Roller, but Rick Roller didn't own the property. Big mistake. Richard R. Roller owned the property. So they had to call me in several years later and fix that. Correction deed. Really just a quitclaim deed. Okay, let's go to our next question, please. Real estate sales contract that has been signed by both the buyer and the seller, but is not yet closed, has not reached closing yet. It is A. What about a uni? That's just one person. Here we have two people, buyer and seller, that sign it, so it would be a buy, not a uni, like a bilateral contract. Executed contract means it's finished, right? Fraudulent contract, well, not with the information we have here. It's not necessarily fraudulent. But what about express? And that's right. Correct answer is express contract. Express contract is one that's entered into what we call the executory stage. The buyer and seller have signed it. They've agreed to it. We're now in a stage where we are working real hard to get this completed. This deal I closed today was very difficult. It was an estate. It had a lot of things that had to be clarified on the title. There were a lot of different things that had to be signed. A lot of complications. And title company rep said, if it hadn't been for Rick, I don't think we would have got this one closed. You need to understand these processes so well that you anticipate a problem. You dig into it from the beginning, and then you solve the problem, and then it's not a problem. In this one, I always order the title work early because I find in the title work there's several different issues that have to be addressed, and I got them clarified well in advance. A lot of complications, lawsuit, death, all kinds of things, and but we got it all done, and it was very smooth because we solved each problem as we progressed through it, and had to have documents signed in Nevada and brought back here, and birth or death certificates. And so, the title companies are really adept at working things out, but and most title problems, I've said before, can be solved with enough time. But when you put it under contract these days, and people want to close fast, and a lot of people are even paying cash and closing fast, you want to make sure all those little nitpicking things that would take 2 and 3 weeks or 4 weeks to settle are done well in advance. And so that's something you really need to think about. So we've entered into the executory stage. It makes this an express contract D. Thank you very much. Questions on anything so far? Cool. Well, let's keep moving then. Let's go to the next question, please. It's a contract that's binding on both parties. Binding on both parties. You think that's unilateral again? Both meaning both, like 2 or more? Probably 2 for sure. It's not a unilateral. It's not executed. Since it's binding, but it doesn't necessarily say it's closed. Guys, the answer is C, bilateral. And it's certainly not illegal. I mean, if it's binding on both parties, that's what you want. that is a binding agreement. Something that would be illegal would not be binding. On one party, it would be disadvantaged. So the correct answer to this is bilateral. Got it? Cool. Okay. Okay, let's go to the next one, please. Any contract can be rescinded. Now, to rescind a contract, it means the people get together and call it off. Buyer doesn't want to buy anymore, seller doesn't want to sell, at least not to each other. And things can back out. Now, a complete rescission is where both people agree. If the buyer backs out, well, that's maybe he used one of the contingency clauses that allowed him to back out without penalty. And he just backed out. It wasn't his liking, or something went, he didn't get the loan, or, whatever it was, that he had a contingency for that purpose. The seller feels the price is too low. Well, most sellers do feel the price is too low. Even though it was the one that closed the day was $25,000 over list price. And when I closed a few days ago was right at list. But anyway, the buyer backs out, the seller feels price too low. Well, it's tough noogies, man. He should have sold for more money. See, both buyers agree. That sounds pretty good, folks. Both buyers disagree, and the parties are married. Okay, that hasn't got anything to do with anything. So the correct answer to this one, guys, is on a rescission where the people get together, buyer and seller, and they decide to call it quits. It's just not working out for either one of them, and so they rescind the contract. They rescind it. And sometimes the seller keeps it right on the market and finds another buyer, or the buyer chucks that one and goes and finds another property. But the correct answer is C. Let's mark it. Thank you. Questions on that? Okay, well, we're moving through these. An agency relationship is not in writing. Who requires all agency contracts be written? Who is that? It's the division, right? We either have rules or we have statutes, laws. Okay, and both cover the fact that things have to be done in writing if it's in regards to agency, and is created unintentionally through the actions of the agent is called. Now, this one wasn't done right. It didn't have a written listing contract, but it doesn't mean you don't have agency. Now, dual agency is when you're representing both parties, like the buyer and the seller. Proper agency, that doesn't really apply here. If it was proper, it would have been in writing. Implied agency. That sounds pretty good, doesn't it? Universal agency. No, that's where you do everything for someone, like they're in a coma, or they're just, they've just lost cognitive abilities, and someone's put in charge of all their affairs. That's a universal agent. We're not universal agents when we're listing properties for sale. So the correct answer to this one, Esther, that's correct, is implied agency. Implied agency. Very good. Okay, now you could get in trouble real bad with implied agency. Some agents think that, well, my neighbor down the street, we're really good buddies. He always, fixes my lawnmower for me and everything, and he's just a really great guy. And he wanted to sell his home by himself. But when he got a buyer, he came to me and asked me if I'd help him put the contract together. Well, okay, now your broker is going to tell you you can't do that. And they're probably going to tell you not only verbally in training, they're also going to put it in writing in your policy and procedures manual, and you're going to sign a contract that says you don't do that. You don't do gratuitous work for people, because if you do it, you're implying that you're their agent. Well, nothing was in writing. That's okay. It was verbal. It was still implied agency, and you're held to the same standard as if you had a written contract, but you don't have it. So this is going to hit the division maybe, and they're going to write you up for not having a written contract. They're going to write you up for just working on an implied contract, and you're going to say, well, I wasn't even paid. Well, that's okay. You can still be a gratuitous agent and get yourself in big trouble. It's going to get you in trouble, your broker in trouble, and that's why they forbid it. You can't, and you're not a lawyer. They might even write you up for, the county prosecutor, county attorney, for practicing law without a license. Guys, you just can't do stuff like that. So, all of you are going to be working for a broker, unless there's someone in the class right now that's actually getting their own broker's license, which is great because you already have some experience. You're getting your own broker. I recommend everybody get a broker's license. And I recommend you come back to this school, because, if we helped you the first time, we'd like to help you again. And we keep current on everything. Dan runs the best school, I think, in the whole state. So it's implied agency. Don't do that. Okay, next question, please. Which of the following is a material fact? Material fact is something that has great input, a great import. Not input, but a great import. It's just really, really important. The seller's willing to sell it for 20 grand less than the list price. Not necessarily a material fact. Okay. The land is rumored to be haunted. Okay. No, that's no. The house has an unconventional floor plan. Oh, hang on to that one. The seller is under financial pressure to sell quickly. A, B, and D are not material facts. They have a bearing on the transaction, but a material fact is something that is of great money import. It affects the price. And you're right, Esther, it is C. The house has an unconventional floor plan. In the business, we say these are houses designed by men. At least the ladies do. And they're right. I've seen some really weird things in a house. The hallways that go nowhere, all kinds of funny things. But that's not going to cut it. That could affect the listed price. Now, it could also affect the appraisal. It's called functional obsolescence. Poor floor plan, and the appraisers have to think about that. This house is really strange. It's just laid out really weird. People don't like that. Years ago, up in the avenues, they're still there, a lot of them, but a lot of them have been remodeled since then. But you'd have to walk through one bedroom to get into the third bedroom or the fourth bedroom, and we called it a train bedroom. You had to walk through this bedroom to get in that bedroom. You can imagine your kids fighting over that. Mom, Sam's walking through my room again. Well, yeah, if he doesn't, he can't go to his room, so, that's not a good idea. But I guess in the 1920s or even the 1890s, we had a little different idea about things. Okay, so which of the following material fact? Unconventional floor plan. Very good. Very good. Next question, please. Okay. Who can be held liable to provide material facts to potential buyers? So you know about a material fact, something that could affect the price. You know about asbestos. You know about radon gas. They did a methamphetamine test. You know about things. Can you keep a material fact secret? No. The owner has to disclose to you, and the answer is B. The agent, once the agent knows, has to disclose to the public. So both the owner and the agent have to disclose all material facts. Okay. If there something is a material, if something is a material fact, and the owner asks you to keep it secret, you just can't do that. You just have to let them know, Mr. Owner, I can't. I have to be fair and honest with everyone. And that item is a material fact. The furnace only works part of the time, then it fails every winter for, they have a problem with it, or it doesn't heat the home adequately. They put in a furnace that would heat 2,400 square feet, but then they finished off the basement. So now the house is twice as big. And that old furnace, maybe it doesn't quite, cool, or, the furnace and AC doesn't quite cool and doesn't quite heat the home adequately. It's a common problem. Is that a material fact? Well, it's a great money import. A new furnace could be $7,000 or $8,000 maybe. Okay, so both the owner and the agent, the agent only know, neither the agent nor the owner know. And if it's a material fact, it must be disclosed. Okay, there's only one way to do business, folks. And that's the right way. Just be honest. This seller on this house today was so wonderful. They inherited the house. The house was a pile. They spent a month and a half cleaning it and fixing it up just so it'd be adequate for someone to look at and say, oh yeah, I could live here. But it was she went overboard. When they came back after their inspection, they were complaining about a furnace and some of the roofing, and they fixed everything, and it cost them a couple $1,000s or so, but they figured, what, I don't want them to come in and buy a house that's going to be bad right off the bat, especially who wants to kill someone with a bad furnace? Come on, that doesn't make sense. Wonderful sellers, right on my database. Of course, they were cousins, but anyway. All right, the next one, please. Yeah.
Maybe this is too much for pre-license, but how about if a condo is assessing a fee to the tenants in order to fix some of the common areas? Is that a material fact?
Absolutely. We have, if you're selling condos, you need to get, three things. One of them is a forward-looking budget agreement that's required by law, actually, but few agents ever ask for it, but you should always ask for that forward-looking financial statement. What it really does is it examines the deposits on record that the condominium association has, or the townhouse association has, and then it examines what future expenses may be coming up, and decides whether or not the budget's adequate to meet those expenses. It's a forward budgeting agreement, and they're required by law to have that. Second thing is you want to know what the financial condition of the homeowners association is, and you want at least 4, 5, 6 months worth of minutes, the last minutes, because they discuss things in their homeowners association meetings like, hey, I guess we're going to have to sue the builder because he won't come back and fix all these things, and so we're going to be hiring a lawyer. And do you think a potential buyer might want to know that? Angela, what do you think? Absolutely. You're absolutely right. They want to know. Or they're already in a lawsuit. Yeah, the beautiful property, great pool, wonderful, but there was a kid that drowned in there last year, and we're still in the middle of a lawsuit over that. You want to know these things because you're buying into association. And even broker friends of mine, I had a really good commercial buddy. I used to hang around, do some commercial things and stuff together, and he bought into American Towers. No, this is going back a number of years ago, but anyway, he bought into American Towers downtown. That beautiful little condo. It was wonderful, but he's lived there a month and got a $5,000 assessment, which had been discussed in the homeowners association meetings. He just didn't have a good broker. he Well, he had himself, but he didn't dig in. He didn't do his due diligence. So he moved in, had a $5,000 assessment. I mean, who could he go complain to? Yeah. Well, the seller didn't tell me. Well, you're a broker. You should have done your own due diligence agreement. And our contracts weren't as good back then as they are now. Okay. Okay. Yeah, Dan, that's perfect for the test because the whole purpose of the test really is, well, if you're the testing organization, is to get you to flunk so they can make another fee. But if you're on our end of the deal where we're getting you ready for the test, we don't want you to flunk and pay another fee. We want you to take that extra money and go out for dinner, okay, and celebrate the fact that you passed. One time's enough, okay? But it's supposed to get you tuned up so that when you get out there in the real world, you say to yourself, you know, there's something I learned in school. I don't remember what it was, but it was something. And it's supposed to spark enough of your memory that you go back and ask your broker, or you call me on the phone and say, Roller, what was it I was supposed to remember? Oh my gosh, it's this. You know, never try to hide a material fact. Okay. Okay. Back to work. All right. Anyway. All right, let's look at the next one, please. Even if there is no written agency agreement, a licensee could create dual agency by a hearing with the commission. Yeah, no, you don't want those either. You don't want the hearing with the commission. B, a company policy. No. C, establishing a relationship with both the buyer and the seller. Okay, working in an open house. Working in an open house. Okay. It's C, guys, establishing a relationship with both the buyer and the seller. Dual agency is fine, you know, as long as it's done correctly. A dual agency where you're representing a buyer and the seller is really a kind of fun. You know, I mean, there's no communication problems between you and the other agent because they're both you. You can catch up on how you're doing on your transaction when you're in the shower. How are we doing on the Miller deal? Oh yeah, we're doing great. You know, it's there's no communication problem. But sometimes you can't do dual agency. You just can't. Oh yeah, this one I just closed on today. One of the 4 contracts that the seller had to decide whether he wanted to buy or not was one I had written. I had a guy call on a sign. He wanted to buy it in the worst way, but I told him, I said, you know, let's write it up. I want you to understand that I'm related to these people. You know, they're my cousins. So I can't represent you in this transaction. So I had him sign an unrepresented buyer's agreement. Did he care? No, he thought he was a really sharp real estate negotiator and owner. And he does own a lot of properties, but still, he didn't get this one. Even though I would have loved to double dipped it. Checks go twice as far if you're the only agent in the transaction. But you know, the seller they like the other buyers brought in by another agent. And that's fine. I don't mind working with other agents. It's just fine. But if you establish a relationship with both the buyer and the seller, depends on how tight that relationship is. If you say things like, well, I love working for you, or I'll get you the best deal, or don't worry about anything, I'll handle everything. You know, no, you don't say stuff like that. You say, these sellers, I'm related to them. They're my cousins. I can't represent you in this transaction. But please understand that Utah law requires that even though I'm not representing you as an agent, I still have to be fair and honest with you. Fair and honest with you. Now, there's some agents out there in our business that hate limited agents. See, they, you know, or you know, they say, no, I can't do that. You know, I can't. How could you ever do that? You know, they have the junior lawyer virus that they caught. It's expensive to get that. You don't want that. It's okay right now to represent both. Will someday in Utah, will we arrive at the point where you can't represent both people? Well, we're already there in some cases. If there's a real tight relationship with you, like I had with my cousins, I mean, they're family, you know, and so I can't really represent this guy I didn't know from Adam that called on the sign, you know, as equally as, I mean, what if they were closer? What if it was my brother or my sister or my dad? You know, I mean, what if it's any of those kinds of people? How could you do limited agency where you're representing them and some stranger who's called on the phone? You know, always think about what it would sound like if you're in a courtroom trying to explain this to a judge, someone in a black robe, and they'll say, let me understand this. The seller was your mom, and you didn't know this buyer from Adam. They called on the sign, and you're telling me that you're representing the buyer and your mom equally in this transaction? What do you think? I'm an idiot? This is the woman that walked through the valley of the shadow of death to bring you into this world. There are situations where you can't represent both, but you can always use the unrepresented buyer's agreement, right? Sure, like I did. Of course, they picked the other buyer. That's okay. Okay, next question, please. Immediately after the purchase agreement is signed, a buyer obtains what? Quitclaim deed, controlling interest? No. Occupation rights? Hell, I've contracted to buy the house, so I'm going to move into that spare bedroom. York, you're right. Equitable title. Equitable title is the right to buy it. You have something. It's not legal title. You don't own it yet. You haven't paid for it, but you do have the right to buy it contractually, and that's called equitable title. Why? Because to be enforced, if you had to, in the worst extremity, you would have to go to a court of equity, and then they would decide, well, you had a right to buy that, at least up until this date, and you were ready to perform, and they refused to sell to you, that you had some rights, and they're going to rule in your favor and force the seller to sell it to you. So, anything you do in court these days, so folks, $30,000, $35,000 just for openers. It's expensive to go to court these days. So you want to write your contracts so that they're strong and understandable, and any idiot could read it and understand what the deal was. And sometimes that idiot's going to be wearing a black robe. I'm going to say, look, this agreement is really clear. Why are you guys even in my courtroom? I mean, it's very clear that this was, you're supposed to do this, you were supposed to do that. However, if it's ambiguous, not good. Okay, next question, please. All right, N submits an offer to buy O's property, and O submits a counteroffer to N. Now, an offer was, property's put up for sale, buyer appears, an offer is written for that buyer, and the seller says, well, I won't do that, but I would do this. And so they counter back. And Esther says, what is the, what happens to that original offer? Well, it's canceled. It's dead. You didn't accept it. So if you countered back and then the buyer said, no, I won't do that counter. I'll keep looking. Oh, no, King's X, I'll take your first offer. The only way you could get that done is if they, made that offer again, because the counter offer canceled the offer. It's not executory. That's that stage you enter into if both people agreed on the original offer. It's not executed. That's finished. It's like the one we did today. It got fully executed today when everyone came in and met all their obligations under the contract, and the title was recorded in the buyer's name today. It's not outstanding. I don't even, that doesn't really mean anything, Anyway, it's like the agent that goes out to a wheat crop and stands in the middle of the field and say, this agent is outstanding in his field. Next question, please. Okay, R submits an offer to purchase E's house. Okay. Later, R decides they do not wish to purchase the house for the offered amount. They must communicate withdrawal of their offer before what? The agents discuss the offer. Well, the agents are going to discuss the offer from the get-go. Let me clarify this. Your buyer wants to do this. My seller wants to do that. Okay. Well, I'll go talk to them and see what they say. Okay. E tells her agent they want to accept the offer. Okay. Well, folks, here's the offer. What do you want to do? Yeah, we want to accept this one. But that doesn't bind it. They could still withdraw. Okay. C, E's agent tells R's agent the offer is accepted. Okay. If we define acceptance in the Rep C contract, the real estate purchase contract, and the definition is that the offer is clearly communicated and it it was accepted, and that acceptance is given back to the other party, being probably mostly the buyer or the buyer's agent. So if you hit C here, you're right. E's agent tells R's agent the offer was accepted, and the buyer doesn't even know yet. Their agent knows, but they don't know. So they call their agent and say, hey, I want to withdraw that offer. It's too late. I've already been notified of acceptance. Okay. Now, they can still get out of the deal, probably, as long as they have some contingencies in it. But don't work with wishy-washy people like that. It's hard enough to get them under contract now, especially if you work on the buyer's side. Okay. Next question, please. No, we're up here. After a buyer has signed a purchase contract with no restrictions, they can transfer their interest in the property by, and the correct answer is assignment. Back in 05, 06, market was screaming again. It's screaming even more severely now, but it was screaming back in 05 and 06. And what would happen is we had vans of people that would come from California. They would load up a van, they'd bring them, and they would go to a contractor subdivision, and they would look through the model homes, and they would look at everything, and they say, okay. And between the 10 of them in the van, they'd buy every home in the subdivision. They put a contract in every home in the subdivision. And then the builder would start building, and 6 months later, they're ready to close. But remember, the market was expanding. It was screaming up in prices. And so what their game was, they didn't really want to close on any of those homes. They just wanted to sell their contract for $10,000 or $15,000 because the prices had gone up. You could do the same thing now, except that because of those times, we put a clause in our contract that says you can't do that. You can't assign it unless you're assigning it to an entity you have an ownership interest in, or a partnership you put together, something like that. For example, I could put something under my name and then add my wife's and my name later for the closing, or more likely I'd put it into a trust of some kind, and or an entity, but it would be our trust. It'd be something we had control and ownership of. And that's called an assignment. It's not going into escrow. That's, in our state, escrow has a little different meaning than it does in like California and some states, where you actually have an escrow company that is working with the title company. And a lot of times they are the same, one and the same, but they still have two different roles. And that's where all the money gets sent in and whatnot. And they examine everything and make sure it's ready to close, and then they disperse. And people go in and sign, days in advance of it dispersing, and it goes into escrow. The only escrow we really have here really is escrow accounts that we put earnest money into, but we could call it escrow. What the heck? But it's just not as binding as it is in many states. But an assignment, you know what that is. An agency agreement, no. Agency agreement would be a listing contract, either a buyer's listing or a selling or a seller's contract, a listing agreement. And d.exercising the financing contingency, no. That's getting out of the deal. If they want to transfer their interest in the property, they're going to assign their contract. Harder to do now, but you could eliminate that paragraph from the Rep C contract or admit it one way or another. We're required by law to use the Rep C contract unless the buyer insists that we use a different one. And he could have one that was written up that didn't have that paragraph in it, with the idea that they're going to put it under contract, then assign it later. Okay.
I had a situation, Rick, with where I was helping a buyer buy a home, and the seller was using a relocation company.
Yes.
And so the relocation company was handling the contracts. And so they actually did modify that term of the contract so they could do it either the seller or the assigns based on who ended up being the owner of the property at that time. So there's legitimate times when you might need to assign it.
Right. Absolutely. And executive transfers happen quite a bit. Of course, everything's selling really fast nowadays, but there was a time in the market where things would take, a couple, 3 months, sometimes 6 months to sell. Meanwhile, this exec is needed desperately in Denver, So his company contracted with a relocation company to come in and said, okay, if it's not sold by this date, because they need the cash out of their house to buy the house they want to buy in Denver, and so the company would help them by contracting with the relo company that would come in and buy the house so that their employee was ready to go ahead and buy the house in Denver, and just make the move easier for their employee. It's the right thing to do, and for many execs, and to keep everyone happy. And so that's what they would do, and that would be an assignment, because they would, maybe he signed a contract, the executive did, but later he turned out he wasn't the owner of the home because it didn't close quickly enough, for him to get his other house. So thank you, Dan. Great contribution. Anybody have any questions? We have about 10 minutes left as we went through our questions tonight in rapid speed. Questions on ownership. Now, there's a lot of other terms in ownership you want to take a look at, and one of them is fee simple and fee simple absolute. The most comprehensive type of ownership someone could have is fee simple absolute. And unfortunately, on the test, they don't call it fee simple absolute. They just call it ownership and fee. But if it's fee or fee simple absolute, it is the most comprehensive type of ownership that someone could have. It lasts for an indefinite duration. They could outlast the owners. They could die, but then their estate still has it. So there is no time limit on this. It lasts for an indefinite duration, and there's no lingering encumbrances against the property. Now, people do put liens on their homes. They borrow money against it in order to facilitate them buying it. That's fine. We're not talking about that. We're talking about really screwy things that they could put against the title, like that might go on forever. If you ever us, then it will revert back to us. Those are all weird science ownerships, and fee simple defeasible, fee simple determinable. That's but the big thing for the test is if you see the word fee, it means fee simple absolute. Okay, it means the most comprehensive kind of ownership someone can have. It's what you and I work with. We list fee simple absolute. We don't list a lot of life estates. You probably will never see one. You ever done one or seen one, Dan?
I've never done a life estate.
Yeah, I've had run across 3 that were already there. I've never done one. I had a developer that said he wanted to do one time for a lady to do. He wanted to buy her house, and she said, "I'm not going to live here. I'm not going to leave here. I'm going to die here." Says, "Well, what if I buy your house and you can still live there until you die?" Said, "Okay, great. Then I have the money to distribute the way I want to instead of have a will." So that'll make the grandkids come over more often to curry my favor. So anyway, folks, it is a great time to get in the real estate business. But you need to focus if you want a life, you're going to have to focus quite a bit, if you can, on listing, on getting sellers. And how are you going to do that? Well, you've got to have people that know, like, and trust you, and you've got to market to them. And then once you get a listing, you need to market that listing, and you need to market the neighborhood, and you need to do all kinds of funky things. These are little cards I send out. They're ugly postcards, and I'm going to change my color because too many of these yellow postcards have been showing up in my house from people who are trying to buy it. Hey, I buy houses. Well, so you want a distinct color. And I've been using this for years, but I'm going to switch to green. But these are a couple I did in the last few. And this one is a just put on the market kind of thing. And it's, this one was, who do you know that's looking to move into your neighborhood? So what you do is you list a home, then I take the 100 homes around that house. I subscribe to a service called RedX. And it's about $50 a month, but RedX actually comes up with all the addresses and the telephone numbers of everyone around that house. And I send them a little postcard like this. And it says, who do you know that's looking to move into your neighborhood. Well, a lot of people have relatives they'd like to live near them, or someone from work that they, now that we might be going back to work again, they might want a carpool instead of working from home. Um, would this offering work for them? And then it talks a little bit about the house. This one happened to be nearly ADA compliant, 35-inch hallways, or no, 48-inch hallways, 35-inch doors, barrier-free shower, solid flooring, closets of beautiful built-in designs and whatnot. Call me and you could choose your new neighbor. And then if you notice here, there's a QR code. I use QR codes extensively in my marketing, where you could just, a lot of people didn't know what they were, but now since we've had COVID, one of the positive things is this is how you get menus at restaurants. So they know they point their phone at that and they hit the little thing, and then it's a video, and it's me telling them about the house, and I've got one there. And then another one, a few days after that one, I'll send out another one, and it says, I'm not sure this is for you, but there's an open house happening right now virtually. Check this out. Scan the QR code with your smartphone and enjoy the open house. And then the same information about the house in the QR code, so they can, they can have me explain it to them again. Look, well, why'd you send out two that was kind of similar? Well, what, you arrogant son of a gun? You think every time you mail something out to someone, they're going to read it? I mean, you're lucky if you get 3 seconds on either one of these things. So they may not have even have seen this one. So, but here's another one, so or maybe they did see that one. Whoops, it's gone now. And so now it impacts them. Well, maybe I should look at that. And then I sent out a third one that said that, hey, that house is sold now, and I've got several disappointed buyers who wanted to buy it because today, because how would you like it if we put a bidding war on your house to get you the absolute top dollar? Now, the cards, that's 300 cards to the same people. Okay, I mean, 100 cards each time, but 3 different cards that went out. Now, do not send these cards out unless you're willing to call the people, or at least knock on their door, and maybe bring a flyer by or something. Say, hey, I have guys sent you these little yellow cards. Here's a flyer. And then what's your message? The same thing was on the card. Doesn't matter. Okay. But you need to call them on the phone, or you need to drop by and see them. And then the reason why you do this, folks, is it helps get you another seller. The National Association of Realtors has studied this forever, and they have found that if a sign pops up in a neighborhood, another sign is going to pop up within 50 to 100 homes within 14 days. So who should get that listing? Raise your hand. You should get that listing. See, every listing should get you another listing. Now, if you're setting up your goals, I'm going to meet with a new agent tomorrow, 10:30. She just got her license, and I'm going to sit her down and show her how to set some goals. And I'm going to talk to her, and I'm going to say, now, what are your financial goals, and, what's your overhead? And, we're going to set up some realistic goals for her. But I'm going to tell her that 75% of her commissions should be focused, or should try to come from sellers, and only 25% from buyers. So this is a seller campaign. This is a campaign that every listing should get you another listing. Now, if you just send out the cards, it's not going to work. You have to make the calls. Okay. And I had one of my rookie of the years, Dr. Carlisle, who was started out in the business, and I was helping him. And, he moved to Parowan, just outside of Cedar City. And he got 60 listings. No, I'm sorry, 30 listings his first 60 days in the business. And how do you do it? With these stupid little postcards. And it just so happened that he was working condos in Bryan Head. And Bryan Head had a slump on the market, and everybody wanted to sell, and no one was buying. So he got 30 listings from all those condos. And then he called me, he says, now what am I going to do? Well, we're going to figure out a way to sell them. And we did, and we sold every dang one of them. So guys, things will work out for you if you focus on sellers. If you're going to run yourself out of the business if you focus on buyers. So what are you going to have to do? You're going to have to put up a database marketing program. And I said, this is the best book you're ever going to find to do that. It's called Hot Prospects. And you can probably get this on Amazon as a used book for $17. And if you're not willing to invest $20 or so in your career, get out now. But it's Bill Good's Hot Prospects. And why this version of it? Because he's had like 4 versions of this. Because this was written after the do not call list legislation went into effect. So Bill knows how to do database marketing, and database marketing is nothing more than getting your friends and neighbors and other people your own sphere of influence, into a database and contacting them regularly. And then there's a lot of other things we could teach you as well, and I'm happy to do that. I want to see all of you successful. I want to see all of you live the dream. I want to see you guys. I got in this business. I was broke. I had a Volkswagen Bug, and I was tired of being broke. I was 20-something-year-old kid, and I just there's got to be a better way. I was living in my in-laws' basement with my bride, and did not like life that way. And but I noticed that in the swanky neighborhood they lived in, that everyone that was making a lot of money had something to do with real estate. So I figured, what the heck, I could do that, and so I did. And I bought my first home within the first 3 months I was in business. It was a nice little starter home. And 3 months later, I bought a beautiful home up where the rich people lived, and hey, there's nothing special about me. I was just hungry. So if there's a fire in your belly, I want to, Dan and I want to help you. I mean, Dan's been successful in this business. He is a 2nd or 3rd generation realtor. Dan, second, isn't he? At least second.
Just second generation.
Yeah, his dad was a phenomenal realtor, and Dad's
awesome.
Carried on. Now, none of my kids have carried on. I mean, I don't know. They just didn't click. They went into medicine and business and software and other things. But I still have hopes for my daughter Nikki. I'll get her sooner or later. But anyway, guys, thank you so much for being here. This is a fantastic business. It can change your life. But it could also destroy your life, if you don't do it right. And if you want to have a life, if you want to go to your kids' performances, whatever they are, dance, theatrical, athletic, then you want to control the inventory. If you control the inventory, then life is sweet. Okay. You could be one mean son of a person, like in Cool Hand Luke. and people still have to do business with you. Why? Because you have the listing. You control the inventory. But don't be that way. Be nice. But what I'm saying is, people have to do business with you if you control the inventory. You can control it by buying it, developing it. But if you're starting out like where I was, that wasn't it. So I got a lot of listings. And, someday we'll share the story. Please come to my live classes. We have a lot of fun. And we're going to be doing more of those. And heck, Dan and I, we might even be doing some of these live also, right? Dan, we want to start that up again? Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, soon.
Yeah, soon. I mean, the mask is coming off. Okay. Hey, thanks for being here tonight. I hope you had fun. If you have questions about any topic, pick up the phone and call me, 801-556-8000. Also, you can go to Rick. You can email me at rick@rickroller.com. rick@rickroller.com. And I also have at rickroller.com, there's some cool little videos that you can watch that are attached through my YouTube channel, which is Rick Roller Real Estate. And you'll find some nice things about how to choose your first broker. You only got one chance. You really only have one chance to choose your first broker. Anyway, but things you ought to ask when you're out interviewing. This is a fun business, folks. I'm excited for you. I'm on the tail end of my, it's been 44 years for me, folks. So, I'll probably retire any day now, so anyway, thanks folks. Appreciate you being here tonight and hope you had a good time and learn a couple of things. Reach out if you're having trouble. Seriously, call Dan, call me. We're here for you. We're concerned about you and we want you to do well. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Thanks, Larry.
Hey, thank you guys so much.
Glad you're feeling better, York.
Thanks, everyone. We'll see you again in 2 weeks.